say that's just not one of the key priorities identified by the governor. Despite the housing policy framework, it was still seen as, in the ideal situation, we would fund a trust fund. I mean, I do think we had some strong conservative support. Ultimately, the bills that were introduced by Democrats, which I think was not to our benefit, given the breakup of the General Assembly. You want to have, of course, whoever is in the majority be providing this bill. So that's something I think we're really thinking about and targeting again for the future, is being sure we have stronger conservative support behind the bill, hopefully introducing the bill itself to make some more headway.
You said the governor had no position on the housing trust plan?
It came down to the wire. It was actually that subcommittee that Bob mentioned, the housing subcommittee, where we learned literally 30 minutes before the meeting, where we were planning to testify, and that someone from the governor's office was coming to say that he did not support the trust fund, because in the housing policy framework were recommendations for things like a trust fund. So we had all very comfortably used the phrasing that the governor was behind a housing trust fund. So she was actually, the representative from the administration wasn't able to speak before the subcommittee to her benefit that day, but again, of course, it died before it fully was, before appropriation. So that message was made.
Did the speaker have a position?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that we were ever aware of.
Nothing concise and clear.
I think it's fair to say, you know, up to that point that we were, we did not have the support of the governor clearly on this. Once the mortgage settlement money came into play, we did have additional contacts with the governor's office, and those were more positive. Now, I don't think the governor ever directly came out in support of that, but certainly I think where they had been a little more actively concerned about the creation of a trust fund, well, from state revenues and the impact it would have on the budget, once the conversation shifted to this one-time source of money, I think they took a more neutral position. And one of the things we're trying to do right now is to encourage the governor to embrace this. Why not? Take credit for it. It's happened on his watch, and we're making a little bit of progress there, and we may get some precedents with the governor at some problems. And a part of that is, looking forward, you know, we've got the upcoming session, which is a mid-budget session, and always a little challenging to think how you can launch a major funding initiative in the middle of a budget session. But this governor will have one more budget before he leaves office. And to my way of thinking, Rob may have a different perspective on this, but that if we can find a way to get this governor to put funding for a trust fund into his outgoing budget, that would be a huge win, because it is so much easier to defend something in the governor's budget than to get something put into it. It's a totally different situation. So I think we will spend a lot of time and effort courting this administration with their outgoing budget. Hopefully the economy of the state continues to improve, and he's got a little bit of flexibility there. It's not unprecedented for this sort of thing to happen. Jerry Beliles created the Housing Partnership Fund in his outgoing budget. So for those of you who are younger than me, Jerry Beliles was the governor. So it's something that's doable. Jerry Beliles was not Bob McCullough. But I think that's a big effort that we're going to have moving forward. So anything else on the trust fund before, any other ideas on this before we kind of move on to some other?
Given that this first $7 million to be available in FY14, and there might be a focus, there should be a focus on shovel-ready projects. I would think that people would be working on those projects now. So conveying somehow to the General Assembly, whether it's individuals conveying information to their local projects may be, what kind of likely success? I mean,
That's,
I think that's a good story to get out there early and, don't do it after the fact because you're already too late to get the money from the budget.
that's an excellent idea. We have a session coming up. It's probably not going to be a super busy session, I don't think. And to the extent that you all can be talking with your delegation up here about the Housing Trust Fund and about the kinds of projects that you're working on now that really could benefit from this, and telling them how their constituents could really benefit from this program that's going to be implemented in 2013. I think that just begins to build that base of understanding and support. I know you have a very supportive delegation by and large, but I think you have some folks in this area who still need to be educated on this and brought around, and really would strongly support talking with them, meeting with them, getting them out to look at needs and look at projects, and maybe I'll do that. I'm preaching to the choir there. Anything else on the trust fund? So maybe without going kind of one by one through these, are there any particular issues for Charlottesville and Albemarle or Thomas Jefferson Planning District area, housing issues that are significant challenges where you think there is potentially some legislative solution that ought to be looked at?
And I have an issue that I've been working on for the last couple of years, is I have families who are disabled, so disabled that their land is held in trust. And because of the way the tax laws read for the local governments to be able to not charge their taxes, they're not eligible. In other words, communities can give grants to disabled folks who own land, own their houses. But because the land's in trust, they can't. Now, they recently changed the law for veterans who own the land in trust. They did this in the last General Assembly. And it would be relatively easy to substitute the word disabled for veteran in that and allow them to have that same right.
And that is in order to qualify for a whole range of kinds
Well,
of...
it's mostly to have your real estate taxes.
Okay. You don't happen to know that bill, who sponsored that bill in 2012, do you?
I have a copy of it, I can email
Okay,
it.
great.
And I think it's, a lot of it's a quirk in the way the law was written originally, about who would qualify, and have legal title.
Okay. All right.
Also on tax assessments, one of the things that Habitat was brought up in this area, and it's also been brought up by a oral housing work group. Whether there's some method or there's some way in the tax code or tax assessment legislation that will allow for restricted properties to have a different form of assessment. And I'll give you the example of Habitat. Habitat's clients, their payments are based on their income. Obviously, they pay a certain amount of income, and some Habitat clients, from what I'm told, are now paying their monthly payments all going to taxes and insurance and none going to mortgage. So, just another tax assessment.
For especially related to owner-occupied?
Owner-occupied,
Right.
yes.
Because on rental housing, as you may know, there's been a whole
Yes.
history of legislation encouraging local assessors to take into account rent and income restrictions on property, and that is still an ongoing struggle, right? I think there will be legislation in 2013 that will look at scattered site rental housing, which currently now assessors can still assess as if it were being sold. They compare it to market comps on sales. So that will come up. But I think on this issue of owner-occupied, there's